Well, you're right. Cloud does have a lot of different definitions, and there's this myth that's being perpetrated that it's services accessible over the internet, and I think that's a very limiting definition. Even if we look at cloud computing and services, I believe that multiple different network strategies will be absolutely essential to meeting the promise of the cloud. So is the internet useful? Absolutely. Is it useful as a means of connecting users, which may be mobile or wireline, to services? Absolutely. But when you get behind the scenes, there's really the requirement for more what I would call hardcore enterprise-grade carrier class architectures that say that I can tie an enterprise data center, let's say, to a service provider data center at multiple layers, and that might include low-layer photonic mesh optical transport services, metro dense wave division multiplexing services, MPLS, VPLS, et cetera. But regardless of which network strategy you use, I think that when you think about the value of cloud computing, one of the most essential keys is pay per use. So for that reason, I think cloud services that don't have pay per use may be good. For example, so-called private clouds leverage virtualization, standardization, and automation, and there's no question that they're not a great approach for enterprises to use internally, but the pay-per-use, on-demand resource nature turns out to have critically beneficial economics. So, for example, first of all, saying operator can mean anything. It can mean a wireless operator, a wireline operator, wireline plus hosting, core network, an integrated provider that has wholesale operations for network as well as IT services. So every one of them, first of all, is coming from a different perspective. Secondly, size makes a difference. So the strategy for a large global integrated provider, the few largest wireline telcos in the world, is going to be very different than that for a regional provider or even a single country type operator. So what they need to do is figure out why are they interested in the cloud to begin with. And just because it's a popular topic and it's on the cover of magazines is not good enough. It really needs to be linked to core strategic direction and vision of that company. And then from there, as you look to where are you now versus where does that strategy ultimately take you, what is the business case, what kinds of investments are required, et cetera. At HP, we really think that we can help a broad variety of operators, large or small, wireline, wireless, integrated, because we have such a breadth of portfolio of services. We are a strong consumer brand as well as a strong enterprise brand. We are leading right now in things like servers and laptops and desktops where we're number one. And so what that means is that we have different approaches that we can do go-to-market as well as cloud enablement for those providers. So as an example, some providers are doing something that is not rocket science, but is very profitable. It's putting together a connectivity bundle of HP printers, wireless access points, laptops, et cetera, that they then tie together with their connectivity services and can generate immediate revenue from their SMB segment, leveraging, first of all, their extensive customer reach, but secondly, their position as a trusted provider. Then conversely, for large enterprises, we're enabling the largest clouds on the planet, except for one that is known for building its own servers, but most of the other ones, whether over-the-top players or telecommunications service providers, we're providing the guts behind the scenes, servers, enterprise storage. We recently acquired 3PAR, which already had a strong presence among service providers. We have the 3Com acquisition. We've got the POM acquisition. So what we're doing is creating this immense breadth of portfolio, which will be increasingly integrated in support of both cloud services, but also the endpoint that ties that together. And then what we're doing is layering in value-added services, communications as a service, device management as a service, cloud enablement. We announced our open cloud marketplace just a month or so ago, which will really create a clearinghouse globally for cloud services so that service providers can leverage the things that are for sale in the marketplace, as well as take their services and sell them through the marketplace. Operators are offering services for all segments right now, and again, I have a more expansive definition of cloud. I would consider classic 100-year-old PSTN services to be clouds. They're geographically dispersed, they're available on demand, and they're pay-per-use, right? You know, it used to be 25 cents per minute per phone call, and so that was a pay-per-use model, and the on-demand self-service provisioning, instead of the web, was picking up a phone. So what we're seeing is IPTV services, consumer video conferencing services, home security services, voice over IP, mobility, all of those are cloud services for consumers. And so what we see is that if you think about customer demographic-based segments, certainly consumers are big for cloud services. Even if we use a narrower definition, things like backup services for your home PC as part of high-speed internet access, or email services, right? Those are in the cloud. So each segment has its own unique requirements. Consumers obviously want ease of use. They want, simplified payment schemes, et cetera, but they want cloud services. SMBs are looking to offload the challenges of enabling a technology infrastructure to somebody else because they want to focus on running their law firm, their real estate firm, their deli, or their manufacturing plant, whatever. And so having their trusted telecommunications service provider provide a full suite of capabilities can really benefit them. And besides enterprises, to get even larger, you've got governments, of course, that are also interested in saying, how do we take advantage of the reduced cost as well as the enhanced agility that the cloud can offer? Besides size-based or usage-based segments, to your question, there's also vertically oriented segments, and so each of those has unique requirements. Those are sometimes called community clouds, but all of the special compliance requirements, for example, in the US, we have something called HIPAA, which is for healthcare compliance. There's SEC regulations for brokerages, banks have regulation, et cetera. And so over time, cloud services will have those unique characteristics that meet the security protocols and compliance requirements that those verticals demand. In addition to that, what we clearly see happening is application stores, rather than offering everything from frisbee tossing and air hockey games to productivity applications, the long tail of hundreds of thousands of applications is great, but the issue is finding the right application. And also for an enterprise CIO, making sure that those selected applications aren't in fact security vulnerabilities. So the net result is that what we see happening is what you might call a virtual private store, and we're working with a variety of telcos on this. We announced some things that we're doing in Korea around the wholesale application community, with the idea being taking the infinite number of applications and whittling it down to a select set. You can clearly see that there will now be bundles and catalogs that are specific for industry. So if I'm a pharmaceutical company, I'll want one set of apps that will run in the cloud that have been tested, certified, high performance, et cetera. In addition to that, the open cloud marketplace, together with directions that we've already announced at HP in terms of platform as a service, will leverage our existing capabilities and things like service delivery platforms to say, how do I now take individual component building blocks and assemble them together in such a way that I can now rapidly develop new applications and shave a massive amount of time off of the development lifecycle. Our approach is very open. So our entry in the market is, of course, based on the Palm acquisition and the critical value that the WebOS component of that acquisition brings. WebOS fundamentally leverages open standards. It's HTML, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript at its core, which is, of course, open. The entire world knows how to program in that environment. In addition to that, for the high performance components, we leverage some of the open languages that are out there like C to be able to say, I can now build a composite application rapidly in our online development environment called Aries that I can either just quickly develop an HTML-based application, or I can code the special high performance portions, for example, for an online game, but also for, let's say, business analytics, tie that into a single integrated application. Now, the reason that that's so important is, and the reason that openness is so important is, if you've ever looked at the specifications for some of the other environments out there for building mobile applications, there's a lengthy learning curve involved in how do I actually learn this proprietary development environment. Here with WebOS, virtually anyone on the planet, and I'll include my own kids when they were 14 learned HTML, can actually build a WebOS application. What that says is if you are an enterprise IT shop looking to build enterprise applications, this is a beautiful approach because, first of all, you don't need to say, well, let's spend 3 months to train everyone and then another 9 months for them to actually develop expertise. You can already leverage the expertise that they have. Moreover, though, you can take your existing applications and you don't even need to really port them. If they're already HTML web applications, many of them will run as is within the WebOS environment. So the cost to migrate is as small as possible because there's virtually no migration that's actually required. And that's true regardless of form factor because WebOS will now run on the Veer, which is the size of a credit card, the new HP Pre 3, which is a little bit larger than the classic Pre, and then also the HP touchpad that we're introducing shortly, we've already announced. It'll run in that same environment, do all of the re-rendering that's required to make it fit that form factor. And as it runs on larger environments, for example, PCs, again, you'll be able to get this balance of HTML where possible and reusable, together with the high performance aspect where needed to rapidly deploy. So what I would say is that it's 90% open because it's standards that everyone knows, and the only part of it maybe that you'd say is closed is the fact that it's also fully secure, so it's closed off from attacks. So that would be really, I think, for a enterprise CIO looking to build applications, it's a great opportunity. And interestingly, for the developer that's, let's say, 2 guys with an idea for a flock of angry avians that might be the basis for a game without using any trademark names, they can take their existing game and migrate it very quickly. In fact, Angry Birds is an example of that, where they were able to take in only a couple of days and migrate what is clearly a very rich application, right, with game physics built in around trajectories, and if you've played it, the walls fall and bricks breaks and glass happens and everything topples. That's complex code. It's not just showing a web page with text. They were able to migrate that in only a couple of days over to WebOS. So what that says is, if you were a game developer oriented for consumers, or if you're an enterprise CIO building the next generation mobile field force application, tracking application, what have you, you can rapidly port existing applications or rapidly build new applications. And so it's great for customers that are end customers. It's also great for customers that are service providers who are trying to reach that market with value-added capabilities. So I think that as far as security is concerned, obviously it's a critical issue. At HP, we believe we have a substantial amount of security expertise, partly through our consulting capability, but also partly through some of the acquisitions that we've made that have included, for example, Tipping Point. And so we have a unique approach. We also build that into our management security control plane layer so that we have the ability to handle a variety of attacks as well as do monitoring. And you're going to see also things like cloud testing environments for load, which isn't a security issue, but it's all wrapped in. If you think about security and availability, it is really what you're talking about. So basically, it's unfortunate that a major provider had a hiccup, and these things do happen occasionally. But I think the fact is that we're seeing increased awareness and simply following basic policies. For example, the recent loss by a major online game provider of 70 million records was due, it looks like, to unpatched servers and no firewalls. And that's just basic stuff that anyone that's taken Security 101 knows to do. I think that cloud providers actually have an edge in security because they can afford to maintain extensive staffs of highly trained security personnel with expertise. And in HP's case, we believe that we can help enable those providers using the latest and greatest technology that is built into the capabilities that we use to enable those providers.